Services Committee because she's the ranking member, and that's what would happen. Do you want a guy like Adam Schiff chairing the Intelligence Committee? He's the ranking member. If we lose the majority, he's going to have the gavel in the Intelligence Committee. Gerald Nadler on Judicial, he's the ranking member. He would be chairman if we lose the House. This is really, really important. So it's not just about Speaker Pelosi potentially. It's about everything with the framework, the structure of the House of Representatives, all the resources being dedicated to nothing but obstructionism and investigations and subpoenas and all this other kind of stuff. And so that's why it's so important. And that'll have some impact on our lives, most definitely.
Well, Congressman Crawford, I just want to make sure everybody knows that he's a member of the House Select Permanent Committee on Intelligence. And so you guys have been doing a lot of investigations, and I would also imagine that those would get kind of, those would be ending as well, right?
Well, they would certainly be redirected. And so when you talk about investigating Russia collusion, we have found Russia collusion in the form of Hillary Clinton, the DNC, Fusion GPS, the Coey Perkins law firm, all that stuff. That's out there. And were it not for our efforts on that, the Democrats would have never pursued that. And I want to be clear about something. I have been very deferential over the years in making a difference between Washington Democrats and Democrats here at home, because here at home, Democrats are typically more cultural Democrats in that it's part of the cultural identity in this part of the country, because we've just had such a history of being a Democratic state. But they're very conservative, and it took a while, to be able to bring that all together. But the folks that remain as elected officials in the Democrat Party are really struggling, because so when I say, and the reason I'm saying this is because when I say Democrats, I'm not trying to malign the folks here at home, because I don't believe they're the same. But the folks in Washington are so completely out of phase with regular working Americans and what they call flyover country that it doesn't even resemble the Democrat Party of your grandparents. Not even close. It doesn't even not even close to the Truman Democrats that that my dad was before he became a Republican. And so I want to make that distinction. So when I talk about what's going on in Washington, I'm talking about what's going on in Washington, and not necessarily what's going on here at home. I will say though that there has been a marked shift here with certain elected officials that they're kind of embracing that, and I find that to be a little bit troubling, because I don't think those values square with everyday Arkansans. But I didn't mean to get off on a rabbit trail there, but I want to make some clarity on exactly what's going on in Washington and why that is so important that we push back against that kind of thing.
Yeah, I definitely think the anti-Trump sentiment, the resist mentality, obstruct at all costs, the Democrats in Washington, D.C., that certainly has, affected the local party as well. Matter of fact, in Arkansas, the Democrat Party has been shrinking for a long time now. And those some in the Democrat Party, I think, have switched to Republicans, and that's a whole nother conversation. But I think those who are left are kind of diehards. I think at heart maybe some of them do believe, hey, it might be.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program. Thank you for starting the beginning of your week with us here. It's the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine. So glad that you're with us. I hope you had a great weekend. Obviously, for our countrymen in Pennsylvania, it was just absolutely a horrific weekend with 11 dead after a crazed anti-Semitic gunman went into a temple service and massacred people just because they were Jews. Quoted saying, "All Jews must die." Just absolutely terrifying event. This, of course, on the heels of the attempted pipe bomber or whatever you want to call that guy that they did arrest with all those pro-Trump stickers on his van. It was a very, very busy weekend. So we get off the air on, 8 o'clock in the morning on Friday. And so I guess they arrested that guy around, noon or something is when all the news started to break on that. It was just a wild, wild weekend. And, of course, you guessed it, it's all President Donald Trump's fault. At some point, I would expect that they're going to start bringing in past events, and they're going to blame President Trump for it. Now, of course, what are they blaming when they blame President Trump for all of these things? What are they? They're blaming him for his what? His rhetoric, his speech. That's what it is. And I would tie the two together. I would tie the anti-free speech sentiment of the left together. Right? They think they did a poll on some college campus. 17% of the students thought it was okay if you banned the First Amendment because they think freedom of speech is lends the room in there for hate speech, and then hate speech is going to makes you feel uncomfortable or whatever, and then you need to be shut down because of it. You have Silicon Valley doing the same thing, right? The reason we lost the 2016 election, they think, is because there was too much freedom, too much free exchange of ideas, and they think some of them were fake. Because they were fake, we have to what? We have to start just purging people, dismissing conservative voices, doing everything we can to try to control things. They're actually giving us a lesson in what election meddling actually looks like. And so this is not, something happens, a tragedy happens, and they want to blame the words coming out of Donald Trump's mouth. Now, we could even get into the merits of how that's preposterous. But I just want you to understand something here. To me, as I looked at the whole situation, I'm just thinking, man, they are really terrified of speech. The idea that, especially this last one, this terrible tragedy of what happened at this synagogue, that I'm telling you right now, the idea that this was Donald Trump's fault when the guy specifically said that Donald Trump was being controlled by Jews and that's why all Jews must die, and that's somehow Donald Trump's fault, is preposterous. It's crazy. And yet that's, here we are. They're now saying that, and look at the whiteboard behind me. You know what? The whiteboard, as of Tuesday of last week, said foreign invasion because there was this caravan. There is this caravan headed for the United States border, right? We were asking questions like, who's feeding these people? Who's clothing these people? Who is, where are they going to the bathroom? That sort of thing. And all of a sudden now that you have this tragedy of what happened, on Saturday with 11 people dead because some guy wanted all Jews to die, now they're saying that the reason he did it is because of the caravan, and they're saying that that's Donald Trump's fault because people on the right were covering the caravan, and they were, well, listen, for example, here's this story here. Joe, just hit, you don't have it, so just hang tight. Trump's caravan hysteria led to this. That's the headline from The Atlantic. Now, we shouldn't be surprised it's from The Atlantic. It's a guy named Adam Sewer, is how I'm going to call this. That's how I'm going to pronounce his name. And Adam Sewer says that Trump's caravan hysteria led to this. I mean, these people are so desperate. They have no shame. They will mislead you and actively deceive you, and they don't lose an ounce, a wink of sleep over it. On Tuesday, October 16th, President Trump started tweeting, "The United States has strongly informed the president of Honduras that if the large caravan of people heading to the U.S. is not stopped and brought back to Honduras, no more money or aid will be given to Honduras effective immediately." And then, he tweeted again. Vice President Mike Pence tweeted. And he goes on and he says, that is why this guy snapped, because of the caravan. It goes on to say the Department of Homeland Security's Twitter account confirmed that within the caravan there were people who are gang members or have significant criminal histories without offering evidence of any such ties. Okay, we'll get to the point where this is Trump's fault. Trump sought to blame the opposition party for the caravan's existence. Every time you see a caravan or people illegally coming or attempting to come into our country illegally, think of and blame the Democrats for not giving us the votes to change our pathetic immigration laws. Well, yeah, that's true. That's true. Then, of course, this guy writes, in the right-wing fever swamps where the president's every word is worshipped. I'm going to talk about that here in a minute, by the way. That's not true. I was talking with some friends yesterday via text message, and it was very interesting because I was asking some questions about something that Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House, said about what's going on in the right now. I'm going to address that later in the show, by the way. Representative Matt Gaetz wondered if George Soros, the wealthy Jewish philanthropist whom Trump and several members of the U.S. Senate blamed for the protest against Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, and who was recently targeted with a bomb, was behind the migrant caravan. Okay. In the meantime, much of the mainstream press abetted Trump's effort to make the midterm election a referendum on the caravan. Popular news podcasts devoted entire episodes to the caravan. Okay, so how is that Trump's fault then? See, these mainstream media types, they can't pick a side and stick to it, because it wasn't just right-wing talk radio that was talking about the caravan. At first, it was all over CNN. It was everywhere, and people were getting ready for this big publicity stunt where they were going to have cameras on the border and they were going to try to blame Trump. But guess what? That didn't work so well, did it? That wasn't working so well for him. And then all of a sudden, we had the events of the, attempted bomber, if you want to call it that. And then you have and now you got this massacre up there. And somehow that's Trump's fault. The guy disagreed with Trump, thought he was controlled by Jews, and decided to kill all Jews. But somehow Trump was responsible for what happened. Let's see. Prior to committing the Tree of Life massacre, the shooter who blamed Jews for the caravan of invaders and who raged about it on social media made it clear that he was furious. So this guy thinks Trump is controlled by Jews, which was the guy, the murderer, the crazy person. And so because he was critical of the caravan, he thought the caravan was being funded by Jews, and because the people, the Republican Party were saying, hey, this caravan is ridiculous and we don't need to let these people in. Okay, we're now responsible then for what this guy went up and did there. I mean, it is so insane. It is so asinine to suggest something like this. But the left's going to do what the left's going to do. This is exactly what they're going to do. Over at Breitbart.com, establishment media blame Trump for anti-Semitic attack. I mean, I just gave you an example. I'm just telling you the newest legs to this are, okay, now if you focus on the caravan, if you focus on the foreign invasion, that's marching. I mean, last I heard they're still marching. I think, is Mexico trying to do something to stop them now? But if you're concerned about that, somehow, that's responsible. Headline, GOP. Headline, Donald Trump breathes, contributes to violence. Headline, Donald Trump's existence contributes to violence. Right? Establishment media blame Trump. He makes this possible. He makes it possible. Now, you can tell with a statement like that, they are really trying to maneuver, trying to walk a very specific line. It's not straight at all. Justin Caruso writes, many prominent figures in the establishment media invoked President Trump and his rhetoric in their response to the horrific shooting at a synagogue in Pittsburgh that killed 11. GQ writer Julia Eihoff straight up blamed Trump, saying he makes it possible. And a word to my fellow American Jews, this president makes this possible here, where you live. I hope the embassy move over there where you don't live was worth it, Eihoff said. Okay, so here we go. Because President Donald Trump did what American presidents had promised to do for decades and failed to do, he moved the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. President Donald Trump says that Jerusalem is the eternal capital of the nation of Israel. He uses those specific phrase. He uses the specific word eternal. And so because of that, somehow he is responsible for a guy who is an anti-Semite, who hates Jews, who says all Jews must die. Well, if only he hadn't moved the capital to Jerusalem, the mainstream media wants you to think those 11 people would be alive today. We have more in the media. We have this other guy. Oh yeah, they love this. They love this. No, this same person, Julia Ihoff. You know what? I take it back. When the President of the United States calls himself a nationalist, it's a dog whistle. It's anyway. It's basically what they're saying is they're saying now, and Sarah Silverman also said this. You know, that Hollywood girl or whatever. She said that as well. She said, "Hey, you know, if you call yourself a nationalist, that really means you're a white nationalist, and that's the reason. Another reason this guy did what he did." Paul Krugman, he said, "But none of the white supremacist terrorism has anything to do with Trump." CNN pundits were equally vehement in their response. Brian Stelter invoked the rhetoric of Trump and conservative media, saying that the shooter was motivated by the migrant caravan, which was being hyped up on talk radio. You hear about an alleged invasion that obviously is not really happening. What do you mean? I've seen how in the world can a journalist from CNN? I mean, obviously we know the answer is CNN. The photos, they're en masse on the internet. You can see these giant lines of people marching towards the country. It was not like it didn't happen. A fake invasion, it's just incredible. Let's see here, and you still have people buying this notion that after the shootings at Charleston, or after the events at Charleston, when you had the people, you had the white supremacists, then you had other people there that just didn't want them to take Confederate statues down. You still have people that say that Donald Trump apologized to white supremacists, or Donald Trump condoned white supremacy. No, he did not. No, he did not. Anyway, this is just going to get worse and worse and worse. We have the midterm elections, and they're coming up, folks, and they can't get here soon enough. What a wild, wild week it was. Who knows what this week will bring? I would love to hear from you this morning. The telephone number is 870-275-9799. You can call or text. I would love for you to go to our YouTube page, Conduit News, and click the subscribe button and click the little bell next to the subscribe button to receive notifications when the program goes live or we upload new videos. And tell your friends to subscribe. Also, check out conduitnews.com. There's a good story on the front page right now about how many people have early voted so far in the state of Arkansas. I've got some other stories about how that's looking nationwide. We'll get to those in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. This is Conduit News Radio. Back in just a moment. Good to throw all of our money into one big pot and divide it up equally, aka socialism. I mean but that's what is certainly going on in D.C. I completely agree with you. I mean they really are embracing socialism now.
No question about it. And we've got candidates running across the country. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is the new poster child for, a new Democrat candidate in Congress, and she has really kind of become somewhat of a rock star with the Democrat Party. And I would say that she, along with my opponent, might be better served to go to Venezuela, where that kind of policy is embraced, as opposed to trying to foist that on the American people. But this is flat out socialism. We've wrestled with this in the past. It's been roundly rejected throughout history. We can see the evidence of people that are escaping socialist regimes that come to the United States, and I don't know that you've ever seen anybody.
Who's next to Zipline?
Me, and I'm really excited about this. Sir, I'm sorry. The zip line has a 350-pound weight limit, and frankly, I do not think it would be safe for you.
Oh, that's okay. I self-identify as 180 pounds, so it's cool.
Sir, that doesn't make any sense to me, and I'm afraid we can't let you ride the zip line. You're too heavy. I'm sorry.
I can't believe this. I thought we had evolved as a society. I thought this was America, but I guess this is just my plight. First slavery, and now fat shaming.
Sir, again, I'm really sorry.
You listen to me. If you don't let me ride, not only will I sue this company for discrimination, I will sue you for damages because right now my feelings are so hurt and I feel embarrassed because I'm holding up the line.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Watch it, mister.
Look, okay, I'm sorry. I just don't think it would be safe for you.
You don't understand. I self-identify as skinny. So you have to let me ride the zip line. The Constitution says so. I get to define my own reality.
Oh, you know what? Okay, fine. Whatever. Ride the zip line. Mike, let this man ride the zip line.
Thank you. Now watch as my self-identity trumps your bigotry. See you on the other side, racist. Here I go! Doctor, thank goodness. What's the prognosis?
Sir, we've done everything we can, and you only have seconds to live.
No, you cannot say that. I do not self-identify as a dead person.
PHP parody.
Yeah.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Also, speaking of conduitnews.com, I do want to mention that we had an interview with Congressman Rick Crawford on Friday. And if you missed it, you need to go and you need to watch it. Now, the full interview is up at the YouTube channel, but we cut out a specific portion of his comments on China. And Rick's comments on China were essentially, we quoted him, we don't need to be bringing Chinese entities in here. You need to go check it out because, he's on the House Intelligence Committee. All right? And he knows what he's talking about. And so check that out. That interview is up right now at conduitnews.com. Share it with your friends. Phone number again, 870-275-9799. Hollywood blaming Donald Trump. Now, this is no surprise here. These people are in a battle over the culture that they have worked so hard to change and corrupt. That's what's really going on here. Hollywood, they're so anti-Trump. They're in so many ways they're blind, folks. I want you to understand this. They really are blind. There are a lot of and if you're blind, I mean, I know this is obvious, but I mean, if you're blind, then you can't see. You don't. It's almost like they don't have the ability to see the truth. Now, and a lot of that is because of the media. It's where they get their news sources. It's what they use. It's also being in a bubble. Like, I can admit I'm in a bubble, right? I mean, I'm in a conservative bubble. I try to ask people that I know who are maybe more moderate than me, that I run into on a daily basis. I ask them about political events and things like that. You wouldn't believe how many people are so sick who are in this moderate frame of mind, who are sick and tired of the Trump bashing that goes on constantly. They can't watch. Moderates who don't really follow politics are like, I can't watch Jimmy Kimmel anymore because every night, it's just the same, Donald Trump jokes, canned laughter. This is happening all over the country. This is not just. So I try to get outside that bubble, but the people in Hollywood, they just don't. They don't care. They don't get it. They're now blaming Donald Trump for all the violence. Let's see, who is this? I don't even know who Ike Barinholtz is, but he wrote, "As an American Jew, I feel nauseous. And if you support Donald Trump, you too, because this expletive is on you. It's your fault. Remember that tonight as you're trying to sleep." Then you have Danny Zucker. To Sheldon Adelson and my other Jewish brothers and sisters who support this bigot in the name of Israel, is moving the embassy to Jerusalem really worth all the hate Trump has sown? On early Sunday, Breitbart News reported the suspect, Robert Bowers, allegedly opened fire inside the synagogue, killing at least 11 people, wounding 4 police officers. President Trump offered condolences for the victims, their loved ones, shortly after the incident. Quote, all of America is in mourning over the mass murder of Jewish Americans at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. We pray for those who perished and their loved ones, and our hearts go out to the brave police officers who sustained serious injuries. It will take all of us working together to extract the poison of anti-Semitism from our world. We must unite to conquer hate. The president then ordered the flags of the White House to be flown at half-staff. Still, celebrities wasted no time to push for gun control, to spread conspiracy theories, to blame the president, whose children and grandchildren are Jewish. That's the other thing. You've got Kushner, his son-in-law. I mean, my goodness. No. Yeah, the guy hates. I mean, this guy hates Jews, right? The murderer. He hates Jews, says all Jews must die, says President Trump is controlled by Jews, and yet it's Trump's fault that he did this. There's literally no. When you get to points like this, I mean, it's like, wow, we really are so different. I mean, there really is 2 Americas at this point. Thank goodness for the Electoral College. I said that just in case there are any leftists out there listening. Thank goodness for the Electoral College, you know, where Donald Trump won a majority of votes in the Electoral College. Oh, but then won a majority of the popular vote. Donald Trump did. He won a majority. He won the popular vote in Arkansas, in Wisconsin, in Pennsylvania, in Georgia, in Florida, in Ohio. He won the popular vote there in those states. Yeah, I'm thankful for the Electoral College. How about you? Phone number 870-275-9799. Of course, freedom of speech, which I mentioned at the very top of the hour, which is the issue here. Right? What they're saying is President Trump's words have caused this. He's the one that's incited violence. He incited the he incited the pipe. What are you going to call that guy? He's not a bomber. He's not a bomber. I refuse to call this guy a bomber anymore, because none of the bombs went off. So you can't say he's the bomber, because he's like really bad at making bombs, or, you know, was just trying to mess with people. I don't know, but he's not a bomber, because none of them went off. So what do you call him? Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I don't know what you call him, because it certainly goes far beyond a prank. Yes, absolutely. Like, it's not just like, oh, I was just joshing. No, you committed a federal crime. But you can't call him the MAGA bomber. I mean, my goodness, you can't do that. He's not a bomber. Yeah, and, you know, some experts look at the bombs and say they weren't actually they couldn't have exploded because they weren't real bombs. So what is he, some sort of, I don't know, like a threat? I guess he would be an intimidating participant in the postal service. I don't know. Anyway, we're gonna take a break. Be back here in a moment.
Shaping the United States to go to a socialist nation. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing, even here at home, we're seeing people escaping California socialism to go and live in other parts of the country, because California has become such a problem. And so I think it's probably interesting to note that my challenger in this race is from California, and he's proposing policies like Medicare for all, $32 trillion price tag. Even the supermajority Democrat-held legislature in California rejected that, because they knew, as much as they would love to be able to, create that socialist program, the money to do it. There was absolutely no earthly way to pay for it, and so they even rejected it. And we're talking about super majorities of Democrats in the California legislature. And here comes this guy from California who's lived here since 2010, and he's trying to get people in Arkansas to believe that he's one of us.
Yeah.
And that here's the best thing we can do is to implement Medicare for all, and it's going to be great.
Yeah, it's they definitely got somebody, your opponent, that certainly is on the left. I mean, is on the hardcore left. There's no doubt about that. Now, speaking of California, you brought Devin Nunes to Jonesboro, and that was an amazing event. I mean, and I got to sit down and ask him a few questions, and that was really great. But we have like a report in the Jonesboro Sun, or there's something that they've been for some reason critical of you doing this. Can you respond to that?
Well, here's what happened: is there was an editorial written in there, and you know what? You're entitled to your own opinion. Everybody is, but you're not entitled to your own facts. And so when you make things up, you flat out lie and fabricate. That's when I start to have a problem. And so, if you purport to be a journalist and you spew facts that are lies, but you're trying to get your readers to believe that this is the truth, that's when I have a problem. And it's really emblematic of what has it's this kind of thing that has propelled Donald Trump into the White House. And so, if you don't like Donald Trump, stop doing the things that drive support for Donald Trump. And the media haven't figured this out yet. No, I figured it out. They're making it worse. But now, unfortunately, we have some media outlets at home that are doing the same thing. And they're just reporting blatant lies and trying to get people to believe that. And so what was reported was that we had a closed
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us on this Monday morning. Hello, commuters. How are you? Keep the hands at 10 and 2. That is the first time I ever said that. Didn't even think it would rhyme. That was not good. That was not good at all. Hey, the telephone number again, 870-275-9799. All right, so I'm just looking at some of your Facebook comments this morning, and they are interesting. I appreciate you guys out there listening. All right, so first of all, can I just say something about the casino situation? Have you guys heard the ads that are running? I don't know what's running on the local affiliates. But it is certainly interesting to note that you have this girl. She sounds just like us. Are you tired of seeing all that money go over to across the border to Mississippi, where it's been in millions of dollars into Mississippi because Arkansas doesn't allow casinos? Oh, I trust her. Don't you trust her? She sounds just like us. It's so nice of her to. All because Arkansas doesn't allow casinos. Can you believe that? Billion with a B. So here's my question to our listeners over in the western part of the state, in Russellville. First of all, in Russellville, I mean, how do you guys feel about the rest of the state voting on whether we get to put a casino in your county? Over in Fort Smith, I'd love to know, did the ads not say Mississippi, and do they say Oklahoma instead? Because the ads over here in my part of the state, in the eastern part of the state, the ads are saying, Arkansas spends so much money in Mississippi, all because Arkansas won't allow casinos. And so are those ads targeted towards the western state, and do they take out Mississippi and instead put Oklahoma? That's a question I'd like to know. So let me know what. Feel free to sound off in the Facebook or the YouTube or whatever. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Joe says this is cultural appropriation because they are. Oh, Dennis is saying, nope, same ads. Interesting. Well, maybe the statistics aren't on their side for how much money goes from the western part of the state into Oklahoma. So Dennis, I'm assuming, is on the western part and is hearing the same ads. So anyway, well, I thought it was interesting. But you can trust that lady. You can trust that lady because she's on your side. Arkansans we can trust her. Because she's on our side because she sounds like us. Sort of. right? Actually, if I'm being honest, I actually think whoever the actress is, whoever did this voice production work, actually does a pretty good job. It does a very, very, very good job because it does come across as disarming, and I'm just saying, I think it's a good ad. I don't know if we're going to have casinos or not. People are saying we are. Some saying no. The people of Arkansas are going to reject it. I don't know. I think it's very, very possible. I think that with this casino situation, it could be the cherry on top of an Arkansas sundae, where the ice cream is a flavored. It's I guess I would call it the permanently poor state flavored ice cream. Permanently poor flavored ice cream. I mean, that's just because that's what this is going to do. I don't have any. I don't know if this is true, but I would venture a guess that when you do hear those ads and you hear somebody saying, this could bring in $5.5 billion over the next 10 years into the state of Arkansas, I can't help but think that there might be some Arkansas politicians who, expanded Medicaid under Obamacare and are looking at the books and are thinking, I don't know how we're going to pay for this. And they're thinking, oh, wow, casinos. Now, that may or may not be the case, but if the people vote for casinos and you just take a long look at the history and the trek of where we've come from since 2016, since 2012, where in 2013 they expanded Obamacare, Medicaid under Obamacare, right? Republicans did this, very strange, and everybody at the same time said, you're not going to be able to afford this. And then if you were to tell people back in 2013, oh, don't worry, we'll have casinos in 5 years and everything will be fine. What? Can you imagine? Can you imagine? I just think, if you look at the trajectory here, I mean, if we do get casinos, boy, it's going to be like the tangent alternate 1985 from Back to the Future Part 2. That's what I think. I hope that reference is not lost on many of you, but I'm just, in Back to the Future Part 2, there's a alternate reality, because old Biff from 2015 steals the DeLorean, goes back in time, gives the sports almanac to himself back in 1955, and then they go back to 1985 from 2015, and, Marty's like, I don't remember bars being on these windows. It's because there's, it's not his house. Somebody else lives there. What a funny scene that is, by the way. Then he goes to the Hill Valley Square, and, Biff Tannen's basically turned it into a casino, and it's, got Sammy Hagar's I Can't Drive 55 song playing. Yeah, it's dystopian. Thank you, Joe. That's all I'm trying to say. I think with casinos, that's what it's going to be. I mean, there's some people that have said, yeah, I voted for it because it's not coming where I am. I'm like, well, that's really considerate of you. Way to treat your neighbor, way to love your neighbor as yourself. I mean, if you're Pope County, though, you've got to be thinking, what? The rest of the state is going to vote on a constitutional amendment mandating that a casino has to go in my county? And folks down in Pulaski County, folks up in Washington County, folks over in Craighead County get to decide whether or not Pope County has a casino. Same thing for Jefferson County. That's a little odd, right? That's a little strange. And then they're going to make Oaklawn, and then they're going to make Southland. They're going to expand. Arkansas is going to have 4 casinos in basically like 4 corners of the state in a way. Is that not disturbing to anybody?
People are voting for it because it's the mentality of, I don't want to go to a casino, but if I ever did, there's one nearby.
Yeah, I think that's you're exactly right.
That's the mentality that they have.
I think that's part of it, yeah.
It's like, I'm really feeling a weekend of gambling. Let's go. Yeah. I don't normally feel
this.
I
don't ever really want to buy a lottery ticket. But you know what? There may be some wild hair, and I feel lucky, and I just need to buy a lottery ticket.
But the Mega Millions is $1 billion. Let's go for it.
They sold that though, right? In South Carolina, they sold a winning ticket. Yeah, people were saying it was a good that it was South Carolina after the destruction of the hurricane stuff, the storms. Anyway, that's my take on casinos. I mean, just we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But I think it could be. Jackie writes on Facebook, I voted no on issue 4. I just don't think it's going to be good for the state of Arkansas. I just think it's going to be, I mean, you can say there's going to be jobs created, I'm sure, with the people needing to, deal the cards and everything else. But I just think it's going to be this big cherry on top of a sundae that has poor foundations. We've got too big of a government already. We're already a welfare state in Arkansas. We need to be doing different things, and I really worry about that. I really do, because I love Arkansas, and I know many of you out there love Arkansas too. But then what I really need to do is, we need to talk about how a lot of people don't talk about gambling as a problem, as a habitual problem that can destroy your life. We really don't talk about that in society, but it actually is a very fast-growing phenomenon with a lot of people. But anyway. All right, so free speech, right? So it's all Donald Trump's fault, right? Everything is. Donald Trump has a rally. And one of the best things that Donald Trump did in the wake of the horrific shooting in Pittsburgh, 11 people dead at the synagogue, President Trump went ahead and had a rally in Illinois. And, of course, the left, made fun of, toothless hillbillies in a hangar in Illinois, waiting on Air Force One. And he starts it out by saying, listen, we're not going to let the act of a crazy person essentially dominate or change the way we're going to live our life, change our message, change what we're trying to do. And I thought that was really, really brave of him, because, of course, the media will not be happy until President Trump says, I've caused this, I'm resigning. They're not going to be happy until he comes out and he says, you know what, you're right. I said make America great again. I said I was a nationalist, and explain what a nationalist is, which a nationalist simply means that I'm going to make sure that America is not going to, be taken advantage of anymore on the international stage. And then, of course, that somehow now they're saying that, he's responsible for all of this. Well, there's a free speech aspect of this as well. I mentioned it a little bit at the top of the last hour, which was the fact that their words are going to cause somebody to do something. And the left believes this. The left believes that words are so powerful. That's why Silicon Valley's acting the way they are, censoring conservatives, and so on and so forth. Well, there's a website, a free speech platform called Gab. Have you heard about Gab? Now, I don't know much about Gab. What I do know are just what I've read in reports. And people tell you that this social media site Gab has become some sort of just basically a hotbed for alt-right, thought or thinking. And apparently this shooter had a Gab account and posted on it, and they're saying it's hate speech and everything else. And Gab is saying, listen, we're a website where anything goes. You can say what you want to say. That's our policy, right? We're all about freedom of speech. And, this guy posted on Gab. He said, quote, screw your optics, I'm going in, meaning, I don't care what this looks like. And, of course, he said, all Jews must die. He said Trump is controlled by Jews, and so then he went and killed some Jews. And because that happened on Gab, people are now saying, well, Gab has to be shut down. Gab has to be censored, blah, 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 blah. Gab says we're an open platform. We're a free speech platform. And, of course, what happened was the company that hosts their website pulled their hosting service and said, sorry, you have till Monday at 9 a.m. to find a new solution. So Gab is now probably going to be offline for a couple of weeks, they said. Gab writes, we will continue to fight for free expression and individual liberty online for all people. Big tech cannot stop us. The mainstream media cannot stop us. The people will defend freedom against tyranny as they always have and always will. Gab CEO told Breitbart News, that he is in active negotiations with several new hosting providers that are unequivocally devoted to supporting free speech. He added, our goal is to have zero downtime, but due to the absolutely unreasonable nature of Joyent's deadline to find a new host, Gab may experience downtime ranging from several days to several weeks as we finalize a new hosting agreement. I'm just telling you right now, expect this to continue. If there are other websites that are any sort of, even in infancy, a competitor to the Silicon Valley giants, the status quo, Facebook, Twitter, things like that, that are now putting, restrictions on free speech because they say they have some sort of obligation. Well, go look at what Google wrote. I mean, go look at that internal document that Google had. I mean, that's the good censor. Remember that? Big news. It got leaked to Breitbart. It's called the good censor. It's the most terrifying. It's very Orwellian. It's very totalitarian. They admit that we can't allow people to have a certain level of freedom because it's just too dangerous. And it's like, who do these people think they are? Well, they think they are our tech overlords, and they actually are, because we're all carrying around their computers in our pockets, and we think we can't live without them. And I am just as guilty of this as you guys, right? I can't imagine doing my job as somebody who's a journalist in the media. I can't imagine doing my job without having one of Apple's or Google's or Microsoft's computers in my pocket all the time. And now, they think they've lost an election because we had too much communication with one another, which is not true. I think the truth got out. Was there fake news? Yeah, there's fake news all the time, but I think the truth is what actually got out. I think the truth is what resonated with people, but they want to convince themselves that Donald Trump is president because there was just misinformation. Really? You really think that many people were misled? Could it possibly be that Hillary Clinton was the worst presidential candidate of all time ever in American history? Maybe in the history of worldwide democracies, she was the worst president ever. I know we're a republic, but you get my point. Anybody that votes for anybody in a democratic process ever in the history of the world, Hillary Clinton may very well have been the worst possible candidate ever. Ever, ever, ever. You think that may have something to do with it? And now I hear there's a gift that keeps on giving because she wants to be president again, and she's thinking of running again somehow, miraculously. I don't know. I don't know how that's going to work. Anyway, definitely free speech. Of course, President Trump said that the tragedy in Pittsburgh, that maybe one of the things that should have happened was that they would have had armed guards, or they had somebody in there carrying a gun. That could have seriously lowered the a number of casualties, and so that's triggered the left, because the left is trying to go after your Second Amendment rights again, or at least say we need gun control. Gun control is the problem, or guns are the problem, so we need to take your rights away. Just ridiculous. So the mayor of Pittsburgh, a Democrat, he clearly is upset, and he said that the synagogue attack, that more guns in the synagogue would not have helped this. And he also used the occasion to stress his stance against having good guys with guns in schools to protect teachers and students. It was a Sunday appearance on Meet the Press, and this mayor's last name is Peduto. I don't think that the answer to this problem is solved by having our synagogues, mosques, and churches filled with armed guards, or our schools filled with armed guards. I just want to remind you, here in Arkansas, we have the freedom not only to constitutional carry open or concealed without a permit here in this state, but I want to remind you that thanks to Senator Brian King, churches can set their own firearm policies, meaning it's a private place of worship, and they can put, if they wanted to, they could post a no guns allowed sign, which would be stupid. But they can organize their own security teams. If you want to have a gun, the church itself, individual congregations get to set whatever their policy is. And that is freedom. That is freedom. Whereas used to, you couldn't. Used to in Arkansas, there was just it's a church, no guns allowed. Well, that's not freedom. That's the state telling the church how to run its business, telling an autonomous church how to run its business. Thanks to Senator Brian King, Republican, we now have the freedom as individual congregations and individual denominations to set your own policy about how you think security should be handled at your church. I think that's really, really good versus what the people in Pennsylvania don't have. We're going to take a break, folks. This is Conduit News Radio. Thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
$758 a plate dinner. Paul, all you have to do is go to the FEC report, and that money would have to have been reported. And all you have to do, if you're a journalist, is do a simple fact check, so that when you call my opponent and say, hey, what about this deal, and you print everything that my opponent said, which were lies, but don't call me and ask if any of this is true. That's what the problem is.
So you never got a phone call about this alleged $750 a plate, which, by the way, that's not how much it was. You never even got a phone call from the Sun?
No, and it was not closed either. Anybody that walked up and wanted to buy a ticket could buy a ticket. It was $75 a ticket. Wow. And guess what? Every candidate has fundraisers if they have supporters that want to invest in their.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
I got a headline. Angry leftist mobs disrupt Marsha Blackburn campaign rally with Lindsey Graham. You're not going to believe this. I can't even believe that this happened, but this is because the left... They have such a devotion to their cause. It's no longer politics. It is it's religious fervor. They are devoted to whatever they think. It's a religion to them. And when you try to undermine somebody's religion, then they react with everything they can to defend themselves. So they don't think this is just disagreements, political disagreements. Hey, maybe I lost this fight. I'm still going to go home. I've got my family, I've got my friends, I've got the things in life that, really truly matter. Not that politics doesn't matter, how we govern ourselves does matter, but you get the point. It's not lighthearted anymore. It is to the point where, you disagree with me politically, I'm going to come at you with everything I have. And that means I don't care about I won't give you the benefit of the doubt. I'm a better person than you are. Period, because I'm right and you're wrong. And so we must destroy you. And that's the mentality behind this. Listen to this. Marsha Blackburn, she opened her rally with Lindsey Graham by saying this. The first video. Sorry, I didn't know.
Too far today. Let's take a moment and remember those that lost their lives in Pittsburgh and express our gratitude for the law enforcement who responded so beautifully. A moment of silence.
Marsha Blackburn is a white supremacist.
All right, so there we go, and then eventually the crowd starts to chant "USA, USA." She gets escorted out, but that's the mentality of the left. So here's the question for you today. Listen, I know what the media is saying. The media is saying that President Trump is responsible for what happened at the synagogue. They're saying he is responsible from the attempted bomber, mail fraud, felon, convicted felon who had a MAGA hat on, been to some MAGA rallies, had that really crazy van. He's responsible for that. His words are responsible for that. The left is going to eventually want you to think that he's responsible for, I don't know, 9/11, as far as I know, whatever, World War II, Pearl Harbor. It's going to be something. By the way, that bomber had threatened to blow somebody up before in 2002. That's long before President Trump ever came on the scene. I mean, these are points that need to be made. So in the wake of that, before that, you have Eric Holder saying kick Republicans when they're down. Hillary Clinton saying we can't be civil. A Bernie Sanders supporter actually shot Steve Scalise, almost killed him. This person that did what they did in the synagogue, 11 people dead, hated all Jews and thought that Trump was controlled by Jews, and that's why he did what he did. I mean, that's the clear motivation here. He's an anti-Semite, right? And but it's somehow all Trump's fault. But in the meantime, you have the left that's getting increasingly uncivil. And the country is at a very weird place right now. Everybody's got an opinion on it. It bothers me. I mean, it really, really does. It should bother all of us. It should encourage us to pray for peace, for some sort of supernatural reconciliation here. But this is my feeling. Is just I look at the way things are right now. If the Republican Party holds the House of Representatives and keeps the Senate, or even gains in the Senate, things are going to get much, much worse in this country in terms of unrest. And the reason is because the reason you had all those marches right after Trump got elected, the reason you had it's because people thought their worlds were ending because the media had spent 18 months lying to them, 18 months telling them that Hillary Clinton is perfectly fine. All of these scandals are just right-wing attacks. Donald Trump is an idiot, has no chance of winning the presidency. That's what the media was telling you. That's what the phony polls were telling you. And when that didn't happen, and you're talking about leftists who put a lot of stake and comfort, they take a lot of comfort in having a big government to affirm them, support them. There's a self-esteem problem on the left in many regards. When that didn't happen, and he won anyway, and he won in spite of that, it sent their world into a little frenzy. They've been told the Democrats the blue wave's coming for the last 2 years. I mean, you know what I mean? If it happens again, I'm just telling you, you can just take whatever their outrage is and you can put an exponent on the end because it's going to be an exponential increase in rage. Back in a minute.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
Message and help them get elected. Problem is my opponent doesn't have fundraisers because he doesn't have anybody that wants to invest in his message, except for the PAC, Act Blue, who he said many times he would never accept PAC money, unless, of course, it comes from Act Blue, which is a PAC, and he has accepted money from them. And I want people to go and Google Act Blue and find out what Act Blue is, what they do, and how they operate, and see if that's the kind of money that you want coming to Arkansas. So the other thing is, I'll never accept PAC money. That's because outside of Act Blue, there's no PACs that want to give him money. I promise you that if he was getting checks from Tom Steyer or Michael Bloomberg or any of these others, he would gladly take it.
Yeah.
The other thing that my opponent hasn't told, and that the so-called media are not reporting, is that he's put himself on salary. This is a candidate was being paid by contributors' dollars.
Wow.
I've never seen anything like that.
Well,
and do you think for one hot second that if I was paying myself with campaign funds, that my donors would stand for it, number one, and number two, that the media would not report it?
You're exactly right.
It's time for. I've been really hands off with this challenger because the fact of the matter is, his message says it all. He's not going anywhere. You've seen a poll that had us up 35 points. So I'm like, I'll just try to be hands off on this. And at the beginning of the campaign, he actually came off as a nice guy. I mean, he seemed like a nice young man. He was extremely liberal, still is. But that's what separates us is maybe on policy. But what I've come to learn about this guy is he is a flat-out liar, and he is part of the National Democrat mechanism to infiltrate flyover country. That's what this is about. This is about the National Democrat Party, because this is happening all over the country, where you're finding these outsiders come in, and they may become part of the community in a short period of time, and then they seek office. This guy ran for city council in Helena and was defeated by as city council in Helena. And then he decided it would be a good idea to mention the fact that he applied for a job in my office a year ago.
Really? Wow.
Yes. These
That's
are the things that some of these media outlets are not reporting. Some of them are because they've asked me up.
Yeah.
But the ones that have decided to ignore facts and have decided to ignore even basic journalistic principles of, the 5 W's and the H and getting a
we're kind of Congressman Crawford. Yeah, you're kind of just breaking up there towards the end. So I'm gonna jump in. What it seems to me like is there are people in the media, particularly the mainstream media, that they are just anti-Trump. They would have rather had Hillary in there, and if they'd had Hillary in there, they would not be They would not be trying to do any of the stuff that they're trying to do. And because you're a Republican and because President Trump's a Republican, they're buying into all the local outlets. They get those Associated Press feeds, which are mostly wrong and biased, and they're probably doing nothing but watching CNN as well. And that's it's filtering down into all levels of media. We're talking again with Congressman Rick Crawford. Rick, what can you tell us about China? Is China a threat to the United States of America economically, militarily?
Absolutely. And I think we should be rejecting everything related to China as strongly as we can. They're trying to impact every aspect of our life. Their first stated goal is to replace the United States as the preeminent economy in the world. It's called the One Belt, One Road Initiative, and it's the Made in China 2025 initiative. And these are stated goals of the Chinese. What the One Belt, One Road initiative is essentially reconstituting the Silk Road. If you remember back in history, Marco Polo era, when they discovered China, and that's when China sort of became a much sought-after destination for merchants, and they were doing business in China, and then the Silk Road became a prominent route from Europe to China. Well, what they're trying to do is a 21st century Silk Road in their One Belt, One Road initiative. They are aggressively buying influence in every country they operate. And they promise jobs, and here's what happens when they promise jobs. They go into a place where they're promising to bring in 500 jobs. Okay, that sounds really good, except they bring in 500 Chinese people, and they fill
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Too far today. Let's take a moment and remember those that lost their lives in Pittsburgh and express our gratitude for the law enforcement who responded so beautifully. A moment of silence.
Marsha Blackburn is a white supremacist.
All right, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the program. Hour number 2. Yeah, so that's what happened at a Marsha Blackburn rally where the special guest there was Senator Lindsey Graham, who came in to stump for Marsha Blackburn. And, of course, they try to have a moment of silence because of the tragedy that happened in Pittsburgh at the synagogue there where an anti-Semite radical who thought Trump was controlled by the Jews went in and massacred people, saying all Jews must die. Officers were wounded. Yeah, that's what happened over the weekend. It was absolutely a terrible weekend. And then, of course, Friday at noon, you had what took place in Florida with them apprehending the. Somebody said we should call him. Somebody texted me and said call him the Phantom Bomber. No, you can't call him a bomber. He's not a bomber. They did nothing ever. He's not making bombs. Like they didn't grow. They look like bombs, but they didn't go off. They didn't actually. The act of bombing, you have to have actually successfully. The bombs have to have gone off for you to be a bomber. Like that's past tense. You bomb somebody, right? This guy mailed packages. Clearly, what he did was illegal. Clearly, it's a felony. It just this idea of the MAGA bomber. Yeah, okay, whatever. Yeah, I know you got to. I mean, the guy's really just not. He's wasn't very good at what he set out to do. If what he set out to do was actually bomb, or did he set out just to intimidate and threaten and everything else, like this guy did in 2002, long before Donald Trump was ever anything. He wasn't even on the radar politically in 2002. This guy is a felon and everything else. But here's the thing, and I said this when we closed at the hour just a second ago. In spite of all of that's happened, the country seems to be almost ready to tear itself apart. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know what's going to happen, ladies and gentlemen, and neither do you. Right now, I can give you some polling data that suggests the Republicans are winning the early vote. They're outpacing themselves in a midterm from 2016, and none of that's good for Democrats if they want to take the House. If the Democrats fail to take the House, the question is, how much worse is it going to get when it comes to violence and when it comes to mob-like mentality and everything else? How much worse will it get? And I think it's going to get much worse. For the same reason, it got as bad as it is now, and it really has to do with a media that is so dishonest. I can't stress that enough to you. That's the problem here. I've got some numbers here in front of me from Nevada's first week of early voting, okay? And what it appears to be that the total Nevada Republican early votes far outpaces what the Republican early vote total was in Nevada in 2016. So, and then if you look at I'm just telling you, Nevada, let's see, I've got this tweet here. Nevada early vote first week turnout compared to 2016. Graphic shows Republicans turned out more in all aspects by the end of the first week. We shall see how the second week goes. Republicans don't have to do as well in the second week. So that's happening. I have another article here. This is The Buzz. It's a Florida website, and it's a few days old. It's 3 days old, but it's a headline, more than 2 million votes cast and GOP maintains advantage. Early voting will begin in all 67 counties in Florida on Saturday. So Tallahassee, more than 2 million Florida voters have cast ballots, and Republicans maintain a solid advantage over Democrats in turnout. The blue wave remains mostly a mirage. Most Republicans are bringing it home so far, in the words of Democratic candidate Governor Andrew Gillum. Typically, the GOP has led from the start in mail ballots, and it edged ahead of the Democrats in early voting Thursday for the first time as several more GOP counties began early voting. As of Friday, 2,037,610 ballots had been counted. Of that total, 43% were cast by Republicans and 40% by Democrats. That's a successful formula for Republicans in Florida, a deep purple state with a long history of tight elections and sluggish Democratic turnouts in midterms. Independents and minor party voters, is that supposed to say minority party voters? Maybe independents and minor party. No, it's minor party. Voters cast 17% of the ballots through Thursday. Recent polls show that Gillum and Democratic Senator Bill Nelson have sizable leads over their rivals, Ron DeSantis and Governor Rick Scott, respectively, among those voters. Now, let's stop right there and analyze that right there. This is something going on nationwide. The polling says that the Democrats are winning. Well, I mean, if Republicans are leading early votes, yeah, there could be some crossover. There could be some Republicans voting Democrat. It's possible. But that's not going to be the trend. That's not going to be the majority trend, not even close to it. So how in the world are those polls then accurate? And that's a really, really good question. Folks, the telephone number is 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. All right, so we talked a little bit about the casino issue last hour, and this is a big deal. I had some people asking me on Facebook or bringing up the point that it's not just the aspect of Pope County really having, in essence, their sovereignty it's a sovereignty issue here, right? It's a Jefferson County sovereignty issue here. This issue for casino a ballot initiative, however you feel about it, whether you think casinos are a great thing, bad thing, you don't care, whatever, do you really think the rest of the state should be able to dictate where a casino goes geographically? I saw on Facebook somebody wrote a post about how somebody in like north central Arkansas voted for it. Yeah, I voted for the casino. It's not coming in my backyard. I don't care. Huh. Yeah. Treat, the golden rule here. Love your neighbor as thyself. Would you want somebody else? Let's just take it the other way. Would you want the residents of Pope County to be able to vote and decide if a casino goes in your backyard? It just doesn't make any sense, regardless of how you feel about casinos. There's something not right about this. The idea that we would put casinos inside our state constitution, mandating that you have casinos in Jefferson and Pope County, and then you allow Oaklawn and Southland to expand to full-fledged casinos. This is going to be very interesting. Very interesting indeed. I mean, if we were taking bets on this, which don't you think would be appropriate? Don't you think we should take bets? Come on, we can do it. I think it's against like FCC regulations or whatever. You can't. I mean, it's against the law in general, right? But we should totally take bets as to who's gonna win. I mean, are the casinos gonna win? Is the Elizabeth Warren Heritage Tribal Casino going to be a reality? Is that going to be what they're going to call one of these things? I don't know. What are the odds? We need to be looking at the odds. Yeah, what are the odds this thing passes or fails? I think it's going to be a disaster. Hey, folks, tomorrow on the program, we got a great show for you. We'll be talking with State Representative Aaron Pilkington tomorrow at 6:30. Then we have economist Dr. Michael Paco. He's going to be on the program tomorrow as well as we have Mr. Joe Cloud running for state representative in the River Valley area. Then we got a lot of candidates I'm going to introduce you to this week. Very, very much looking forward to it. We'll be talking on Wednesday with Craig Christensen. He's a candidate for State House District 47. Interesting, Craig Christensen is actually a Republican challenging the Democrat incumbent, John Michael Gray. John Michael Gray is the head of the party. He's the head of the Democrat Party of Arkansas. That's a big deal. Also, we'll be talking with Congressman French Hill on Friday. Very excited to talk with him again. He has a huge race. I want to talk about this here for a second. And I know he's leading in the polls. It's doing very well. You don't need to take that for granted. You have to get out and go vote. If you're living in District 2, if you're living in Central Arkansas, you have to beat the Democrat challenger. You have to get out and vote. And this is why. Because they can't take – I mean, listen, if they take the House, we're talking about endless investigations. We're talking about the mainstream media will all of a sudden think that the House investigations are legitimate, which they don't think. The House Intel Committee of them investigating Russian collusion. I mean, I'll reference Rick Crawford. He was on the program on Friday. He said that the House Intel Committee did find Russian collusion, but it wasn't with Donald Trump and the Russians. It was with the Democrats, Hillary and the Russians. And, of course, the media, you're just Republicans. You're just doing that to protect your president. No, the evidence and the facts are there, and they've released them. And eventually we're going to get to see the unredacted. We're going to get to see the full FISA application eventually. We are. I mean, I was thinking we were going to get to see it last week. I was thinking we were going to get to see it 4 weeks ago. I mean, I interviewed Devin Nunes here in Arkansas when he came to Arkansas, and he thought it was coming soon. And we still don't really have this thing, so I'm not sure what is going on with it. But, I mean, you'd think it'd be a good time to release it, right? But anyway, French Hill needs to go back to Washington, and the reason is because right now the trajectory of the country is really, really good right now. Right now, there are so many policies that need to, that make sense that are being implemented. There are so many other policies that don't make sense that are being taken away right now. I can't believe it. I couldn't believe that I come into work this morning and they have a section on this Westwood One News that I listen to because that's just, I mean, that's what's on. So I'm listening to it, and they say, all right, how are things going in Trump's economy when it comes to personal income? And they lead with this survey, and they said 17% of Americans, according to this survey, think that they are poorer since Donald Trump took office. And I think 17%, 17%, interesting. That's certainly not the majority. That's certainly not the majority of people's opinion. 17%. That's very, very low, right? What's the other percentages? And then they finally get to, 38% believe that they're wealthier since Trump took office. 33% think it's about the same. I mean, it's like, what? Why would you not lead with what most people think or with the larger percentage? But instead, they lead 17% of the people think that they're poorer since Donald Trump took office. See, this is what I'm talking about. This is just this kind of bias is just absolutely ridiculous. Okay, and so if you think the country needs to keep moving in this general trajectory, then please go out and vote. Like I said, French Hill needs to go back to Washington D.C. because of what's going on. And listen, I don't want to hear the phrase Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, and neither do you. None of you want to see that. Even Democrats. Come on, you're honest. Democrats, you don't want to hear that phrase. That'd be just absolutely terrible. Terrible, awful. Can't think of anything worse. Politically, let's just say. The phone number 870-275-9799. We're going to reset here, take a break, come back in just a moment. Folks, here's the question today for you. Are Republicans following Donald Trump because they are, have they bought into identity politics? That's the question I would like to ask you this morning. Are Republicans following and pleased with Donald Trump because they've bought into identity politics? The Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, seemed to allude to that fact. I'll talk more about this when we come back.
And then they kind of live in a closed community, and that they don't go out and empower, and create economic impact. It's all sort of a closed cell. This has happened everywhere they've operated across the country. They go in most recently in places like Costa Rica, and they say, we want you to expel your Taiwanese diplomats. And the Costa Ricans push back, and they say, what is it going to take to get you to expel the Taiwanese diplomats? And the Costa Ricans were bought off with a soccer stadium. So this is the kind of thing that they do. And then they go in and they promise to build infrastructure. Okay, they build infrastructure, but they're doing it for their own purposes, not to empower an economy of a country like, say, for example, Kenya or Mozambique or Uganda or Nicaragua, for example. They do that for their own interest. And the last thing we need to do is be laying down the welcome mat and saying, come on in, China. The other thing is that we had 5 university researchers that were caught up.
Let's face it, times are tough for the Arkansas General Assembly. They're all waiting for the spotlight exposing public corruption to end, so they won't be under so much scrutiny. And during this time, what if you're a legislator and you need money? What if you're slapped with a huge expense? What if your check for consultant services is late this month? Or maybe you just need extra cash now until payday. When that happens, you can't wait. Hi, I'm Bobby Blackmail for the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank, your trusted source to over 135 lenders to get you short-term cash fast. Use the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank today, and you can have up to $12,500 cash in your checking account tomorrow. Dried-up bribes no longer coming from Medicaid entities? Handled. Extra cash until your hopeful acquittal? Done. And you'll be surprised at how easy it is to get extra cash. Just be an elected official and be comfortable with the status quo, and we'll connect you with a fellow legislator who is ready to loan. It's quick and easy. And don't worry if you can't make the payments, because the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank is designed to help you get through these tough economic times. There are other ways you can pay off your debt, like by voting the way the establishment wants, or by rewarding some with committee chairmanships. So forget about overdraft fees and the spirit of covetousness that sometimes overwhelms the best of lawmakers. Just remember, the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank for short-term cash between colleagues when you need it fast.
Some transactions have long-term consequences.
Paul Harrell, parody.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Let's see, Bill on Facebook writes that 17% of the ones that had their food stamps decreased or cut off completely. They're so they're the ones that have seen their income drop under Trump. So it's the welfare. Yeah, Jackie on Facebook in the responding to the concept of having Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi being a reality. Jackie writes, I don't want to see Maxine Waters heading up the Finance Committee either. That's exactly right. Gary writing, payday lenders. Yeah, that's right. That's our latest parody. The Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank. So for all of your fast cash needs. Oh, man, that was fun to make. All right, so real quick here, I got to bring you up to speed on some Arkansas news that you need to know. There's no surprise here, but we have the Supreme Court race that's coming up. We're all voting on it right now. Early voting's going on. It's between Justice Courtney Goodson, whether or not she gets to remain in her spot, and David Sterling, okay? And he's challenging Courtney Goodson. Now, here's the thing about this. I had somebody ask me the other day, what's up with Courtney Goodson? I don't understand. Didn't she just run? I'm like, no, you have to tell people. Yeah, well, the answer is yes, she did. Let's see where's that flyer at? Yeah. She did run last time, two cycles ago, but she wasn't running to keep her current slot as an associate justice. See, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice of the court was open, and so Courtney Goodson as a justice was trying to basically kind of get a promotion and become the Chief Justice. That's what she was running for, and of course she lost to Dan Kemp. Now, one of the reasons she lost because of mailers like this. Which basically was the lifestyles of the rich insiders, and Arkansas Supreme Court Justice Courtney Goodson, and so she a lot of people think she lost because of this, because of flyers like this, which talked about stuff that she would do and the trips that she would take, and the Washington Post stories. Arkansas Justice Courtney Goodson accepted a trip to Italy worth $50,000. The Arkansas Democrat Gazette. I mean, all these they're saying that this is why Courtney Goodson was not able to make the leap to Supreme Court Chief Justice last time. Well, so these these facts that are very, very bad for her, apparently. These facts are trying to be combated now. Now, back during when it was a three-way race, Justice Courtney Goodson sued to have advertisements that were playing on television in Little Rock markets in Northwest Arkansas to have them frozen, to have them. And a judge at the time actually said, yeah, okay, and said, they pulled the ads and then they later put them back on. Anyway, it's very anti-freedom of speech. Well, we're in the middle of early voting, and there's another group that's putting similar information out there that Courtney Goodson disagrees with. So what has she done? She has decided to sue again. Arkansas justice's lawsuit over ads has now been moved to federal court. An Arkansas Supreme Court justice's efforts to halt a Washington-based conservative group's attack ads and mailers has been moved to federal court. The AP writing, an attorney for the Republican State Leadership Committee on Friday filed notice that Justice Courtney Goodson's lawsuit against the group has been moved from Pulaski County Circuit Court. Goodson on Thursday filed a lawsuit seeking to halt to the group's ads and mailers. Goodson's running against David Sterling. The Republican State Leadership Committee's Judicial Fairness Initiative has spent $1.1 million so far this fall on the high court race. A state judge earlier this year temporarily blocked several television stations from airing another group's attack ads against Goodson. So that's kind of where we are now. And again, I just got to tell you, I know I talked about this at the last hour. It is such a freedom of speech issue. Really, we're being confronted across really all spectrums. Freedom of speech. What do you have the right to say? What do you not have the right to say? And that's something that the left's having a really hard time with, right? I mean, they're so anti-freedom of speech, they want you to think that President Trump and the things he said about Israel are responsible for an anti-Semite going in and murdering 11 people over the weekend at a synagogue, that it's Trump's speech that's the problem. It's Trump's rhetoric that's the problem, and whatever kind of that's the issue here. And they're terrified of that, right? Now, obviously, I don't think they actually believe it. Let's just be clear here. The mainstream media doesn't actually believe that Donald Trump's rhetoric caused a guy to go in and murder 11 people. And you know what? We really should be focusing on. I mentioned the guy that they arrested, the non-bomber. I mentioned him, but you know what? None of those bombs went off. It's certainly, he's going to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. But here's a guy who did not like Trump, who disagreed with Trump. Okay, he disagreed with President Trump, thought he was being controlled by the Jews, and went in and killed a bunch of Jews. And the mainstream media says this is Donald Trump's fault. He is to blame. And I think the rest of the country sighs. I think we're exhausted. I think we do want unity. I don't think we're going to get it anytime soon. I think we've got to go out and vote. And Tim, I got a text message here. Tim says, how about the not a bomber? And that's not bad. What about that, Joe? You like that one? We're trying to figure out what to call him. The left wants to call him the MAGA bomber, but he's not a bomber. He didn't successfully bomb anything. Just the not a bomber. So this not a bomber guy. That's going to sound like we're mispronouncing Obama's name. Not a bomber. It's not a bomber. Back in a minute.
I think were indicted on federal charges of espionage here in Arkansas.
Yeah, they were trying to steal our rice technology, or they did steal it, I think, from Stuttgart.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what they do. They lie, cheat, steal, forced technology transfers, theft of intellectual property, these joint ventures that they set up that are designed for them to get our technical information so they can counterfeit our products and then flood the market with a cheaper version of what we're trying to build. And that creates a competition problem. Most recently, if you see what's happening in the soybean market, this is more related to China's misreporting, deliberate misreporting. So what happens is they go in and they don't report accurately carryover stocks from the previous year, and then they overstate their demand, and so then, of course, the market responds in that they plant more soybeans. They do this deliberately to depress the price. They run the price down, they short the market, and then they've got a depressed cash market as well. They know exactly what they're doing. That has contributed to the decline in soybean prices more than anything. And then, of course, now we're dealing with the weather and the discounts associated with damaged crop due to weather. That has nothing to do with anything else other than just Mother Nature. But what's exacerbating that problem is the fact that China does not accurately report their numbers. They do it for effect. They're trying to drive down the price of soybeans because they have to have a set number. And then they overstate their demand because that alters the supply picture. That makes farmers say, well, we better plant more soybeans because China's the 60% of our export market. So then they plant more soybeans based on faulty information, and then they come back months later and go, oh, yeah, we really don't need that many, and so prices go down. That's the whole point of why the WTO exists, is to prevent this kind of behavior, and yet the WTO gets them a pass every time. They get developing nation status as opposed to a developed nation. They're investing billions of dollars globally. They're a developed nation. If you can invest the kind of money that they're investing, they don't need that kind of protection.
What do you think? So what would the solution be? I mean, does there just need to be some national policy? I mean, I know Donald Trump is really taking the bull by the horns here with the tariffs, and that's a good thing. But what needs to happen? I mean, does there need to be just a formal declaration of? And I know Vice President Pence basically made that declaration a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they need to be called out globally for what they're doing. This doesn't just impact the United States; it impacts other countries around the globe. But because we are such a preeminent economy, in fact, now ranked number one, the most productive economy in the world, back since 2008. You do the math and see how this happened. But since 2008, we've not had that ranking. We do now under this.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So I've been trying to think about a few things over the weekend, and I've been talking with my friends, and essentially I was really confounded by this statement. Paul Ryan went on CBS's Face the Nation, and he basically said that we have adopted on the right Saul Alinsky-style identity politics. And I really wanted to think about that because, I'm not the biggest fan of Paul Ryan ever, but I'm not, he's done sometimes he says some things that are good, and it is what it is, whatever. I don't think he fits in with where the things are going now. I certainly don't. I think in some ways, Paul Ryan's held things together. In other ways, he's kind of still operating like a 1990s style politician where he has to say certain things because the media is demanding a condemnation of this or a condemnation of that. So, and the reason that's stupid at this point is because the media acts like they are the moral arbiters, that they are the standard, and they are giant hypocrites in what they are outraged on from one day to the next. Anyway. So Paul Ryan said this. The question was, you've seen some President Trump's rallies. Do those rallies accentuate the things that unite us, or do they do something very successful in politics which is sow division in the country? Do you see that happening at his rallies? Paul Ryan's response to this question was, quote, sometimes, yeah, not always, but sometimes. I worry about tribal identity politics becoming the new norm of how politics is waged. As conservatives, we always thought this was sort of a left-wing Alinsky thing. Unfortunately, the right practices identity politics as well. It's the day and age, technology and everything else, identity politics, which is now being practiced on both sides of the aisle, is unfortunately working. I think we as leaders, we have to figure out, how do we make inclusive, aspirational politics strategically valuable again? Okay, so that last sentence there is like crazy. It's bonkers. I'm saying it's just baloney. I guess that's the only way I can say it in a nice way. But I did want to know, like, what does he mean that the right has adopted identity politics? And I really wanted to ask myself, serious question. I asked my friends, is that true? I mean, has the right adopted identity politics? I mean, in trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, I'm sitting here thinking, well, okay, it's Trump, right? He's essentially saying, well, because Trump is what he is and is being successful, and there are different measures of how you quantify his success or whatever, but it's Trump, and Trump equals identity politics, and I don't see that. I don't see that at all. Now, there is a danger, and I've warned of this before. The left put all of their hope in Barack Obama. They put all their hope in one man. Just do it. Just take the bull by the horns and just make the change that we demand and that sort of thing. And I have warned that there is a danger in that. Like, we on the right, we believe in ideas. We don't believe in men because we know men are not perfect. We know men is going to let us down, right? We know we're all, I mean, that's just who we are is human nature. So you got to be very careful that you don't fall into like a cult of personality. And at the same time I say that, I can say, listen, but Donald Trump is fantastic to watch, but it's not just his style. It's not just his style. People love his style, sure. But it's what he does. It's what he promised to do. It's what he is doing. That's what people are respecting. It's not some sort of identity politics, cult of personality. This is so much more of people believing in ideas, people being loyal to ideas in a way of, look, this is what needs to have been said for a long time. This is what needs to be done to try to solve our problems. We now have a president that's at least recognizing what the problems are that we've been screaming forever, and politicians, no, we can't identify, like we can't identify with we can't claim that that's a problem and legitimize what the American people really think. And there could be some projection and deflection going on here with Paul Ryan. I just got a text message about that, and that's very true. There could be some projection here because, you see, it's actually the right-wing establishment that loves identity politics. I mean, I've had to listen for with John McCain and with Mitt Romney. They play perfectly into identity politics when it comes to rich versus poor. What was Mitt Romney about? Mitt Romney was petrified that and didn't want to embrace the fact that he was a successful, very, very, very wealthy person. So he has to run a whole campaign of, I'm running this campaign for middle-class Americans. Hey, buddy, why don't you run the campaign for all Americans? You've thought about that, for rich, poor, and middle class? All Americans. Because, and so it's actually the left that is, the leftist Republicans, the quote moderates, they're the ones that have been doing identity politics for years. That's the real truth. They've been doing identity politics for years. They accept the definitions of the left, and then they try to campaign using the left's own terms. So as I really think about this more, I don't even know what Paul Ryan's talking about here, because they're the ones that are saying, yeah, we've got to, saying like I'm running for middle class. Now, here's the truth. What are the results are there. President Trump runs for all Americans, but look at the plight of the middle class right now. There's actually hope there. Look at the plight of the poor right now. There's hope. Look at black unemployment. It's the lowest in the history of the country. Look at the black. You've got black approval ratings for Donald Trump and his job. Right, was 15%. Now, according to one poll, it's 30%. Look at the stock market. Look at the wealthy. I mean, we had some bad weeks, some corrections and things like that last week. But look at how the wealthy are doing. I mean, look at how the wealthy are doing. Look at how the middle class are doing. See, that's what a presidency looks like when you actually try to solve problems. And then they want to say, well, he's a nationalist and that's code for being a white supremacist, when that's not true at all. I just think people are, in many ways, blind. Now, some of them I think are intentionally deceptive. I don't think that's what Paul Ryan is doing here. I just think Paul Ryan hasn't gotten the memo that it's not the 1990s anymore. And the people they want real leadership. And one of the reasons Donald Trump makes politicians crazy, in my opinion, is because Donald Trump is himself. And there's a lot about Donald Trump that's exactly the way many of these other politicians are behind closed doors, and they don't like it. They like the facade. They like, no, I'm decent, I'm this and I'm that. But I think behind closed doors, they're a lot more like Donald Trump than they would ever want to admit. And Donald Trump is refreshing because he just he tells what is on his mind, and that's refreshing in this day and age when you really never know what somebody truly thinks. I mean, listen to some of the political speak that goes on here in Arkansas. You really never know, and you really never know what Asa Hutchinson, how he really believes on a complicated issue. You really never truly know how he feels, right? I mean, there's a few things when he does tell you how he really truly feels, like getting rid of Medicaid expansion is wrong because it's unbiblical. He said that. Well, that got him into some trouble because people said, "Wait a second, are you virtue signaling right now?" And people got really upset about that. But a lot of times you have these 1990 style politicians and you never really understand. So I was asking this question, and then last night, Mark Levin has a television show called Life, Liberty, and Levin. And he interviewed Newt Gingrich, of all people, Newt Gingrich is a historian and a very good, articulate person of, articulating conservatism. But I was amazed that Newt's response here to Mark Levin's question really helped me try to answer and explain the phenomenon of Donald Trump. So how does Paul Ryan explain it? Paul Ryan explains it by saying, well, I think we're going into identity politics, and the left does identity politics. Well, that's not true at all. Listen to Newt Gingrich as he describes the trek of conservatism from Barry Goldwater to Donald Trump, and he describes the Bushes as mere placeholders because they didn't understand what it was about. Listen to this as he responds, and just we're going to stop and go here. This was last night, Newt Gingrich.
Well, what had happened was that the Roosevelt-era Democrats created the modern system, big bureaucracies, centralized power, a whole set of values, compounded by Eisenhower making a huge mistake in appointing Earl Warren and leading to a much more radical court than anybody had imagined. So by the early 1960s, you had a reaction building in the country that said government's too big, our policy against the Soviet Union is too weak, taxes are too high, and frankly, we don't want Washington running our lives. The guy who personified that was Barry Goldwater, and he wrote a little book called Conscience of a Conservative, which came out in paperback, and I was a college student at the time, and it just swept the country. I mean, it really created a whole generation of Goldwater supporters who really saw him sort of personifying a new way of thinking about things. He was very important because he broke the establishment's grip on the Republican Party. He lost badly in the general election to Johnson, who probably was going to win anyway because John F. Kennedy had been assassinated and we weren't going to change presidents twice that quickly. But Goldwater sort of planted the flag, and ironically, in defeat, he asked Ronald Reagan to make a nationwide speech in October of '64. And so, in a way, the conservative flag was passed from Barry to Ronnie at that moment. Reagan's speech was electrifying, and he went on to become governor of California. And I would argue that there's a continuum that starts with Goldwater, goes to Reagan, that in many ways Nixon and all the traditional Republicans are placeholders, just as later on the Bushes would be placeholders because they don't actually understand the long-term trajectory of conservatism. Reagan comes along, ultimately becomes a very consequential president in three ways: defeating the Soviet Empire, which is an enormous achievement, one of the great strategic victories of all time because he did it without a war, relaunching the American economy, getting people to feel good about being entrepreneurs, and really focused on American civic culture. And in fact, in his farewell address, he says one of his great...
All right. Defeat Soviet Union, get the economy going again, focus on American culture. Okay. Does that sound familiar to anybody now? Okay, ISIS, North Korea, Iran, working on China, trying to prevent a war there, trying to crush them kind of economically right now. Okay, does that sound familiar to anybody? Oh, the economy going again, middle class, got some life in it again. You have people wanting to invest. Interest rates are going up, which is, that's kind of an iffy thing. But you see what I'm saying? Getting the economy going. I mean, let's just take GDP. Just take GDP. Look at the 3% growth. They're saying maybe 4% growth next. Just look at the GDP. Okay, then the cultural thing. Folks, this country was about to get strangled by political correctness. Literally, with speech, police has what it has done to this culture. It basically says, don't be honest with somebody. And it's still trying to strangle it, but I'm telling you, he is uprooting that. And the media will hopefully they'll eventually understand this. But there are people, political correctness and our culture in general. Why do you think Hollywood fights Trump so bad? Because he's altering the culture. And the culture right now is one where there is no moral compass. There's no moral compass in our society. It is literally do whatever makes you happy. That's what has been promoted for a very, very long time now. And here comes Trump along, and he's saying, "Hey, wait a second. Maybe that's not such a good thing. Maybe we need to drain the swamp. It starts at the top, where you have politicians taking advantage of their citizens, and then you have citizens taking advantage of other citizens."
This may seem off topic, but do you know anything about a sleeper hold?
I know it puts you to sleep. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you know how to prevent a sleeper hold? If someone tries to put you in that position,
no, I do
you
not.
Stick your hand where they're like in between your neck and your arm. It allows you wiggle room. Trump is that hand.
Yeah.
Trump is that hand that kept this country from being put to sleep via political correctness.
Yeah. No, that's very good, Joe. I agree with that. So you have Newt Gingrich here on Life, Liberty, and Levin. And he goes over the three things Reagan did, and I thought, wow, what is Trump doing? Very similar stuff. Keep going here, because he goes on.
Sadness was that they had not driven home American history enough. But he was trying to rebuild the sense of being American. You then have a period that we're in the doldrums, and we come along with the contract with America. And for the first time in 40 years, the Republicans win the House. We impose a balanced budget for 4 straight years. We impose welfare reform. We have a number of other reforms. Bill Clinton actually comes to the Congress and with a straight face says, the era of big government is over. It was really a pretty remarkable moment. And led scars on the left, which Hillary never overcame. There are a lot of liberals who hated what the Clintons did. And then we again sort of had a period of being in the doldrums and following some policies that frankly didn't work. Look, I was for the war in Iraq, and I certainly was for the war in Afghanistan. But you have to look 17 years later and say, we haven't figured out how to win these things. And along comes Trump, and I agree with you about describing Trump. And as you and I talked about earlier off camera, you have the Tea Party movement begin to explode around 2010 because they couldn't grow up against a Republican president, but they could rapidly mobilize against a Democratic president. And so you have a whole new wave of energy. John Boehner and the House Republicans actually won 10 more seats in 2010 than I won in 1994.
Skip ahead here to 63.
For the time since 1994. And along comes Trump, and I agree with you. I tell people, I'm not sure he's a conservative, but he's the most effective anti-liberal in my lifetime. And whether it's deregulation or conservative judges or cutting taxes or standing up for an American foreign policy based on American values, every time you turn around, he is instinctively saying things which drive the left crazy. And he's doing it, I think, because of this notion of common sense and the things he learned a long time ago. Again, he's old enough. He remembers the values of the post-World War II, highly patriotic America, where people, loved the flag and they loved the idea that we were the greatest nation on earth, and they loved the values of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. And so in a lot of ways, he's carrying forward, almost as a grandfather, the values of 2 generations ago and taking head on the left-wing radical values which the academic world, the news media, and Hollywood have tried to impose on the country.
And yet it seems to me, Newt, that He wasn't always.
Again, this you could check this out. It's up on YouTube, just right there. Newt Gingrich on the evolution of conservatism, and it does go a long way, I think, to explain President Trump. You say, I'm not so sure he's a conservative, but I think he is an anti-liberal. Now, here Levin goes on to say, I think the reason Trump is a conservative is because he's now sitting in the Oval Office. He realizes how much power he has, and he's really honestly, thoughtfully trying to ask himself, does this policy that's been in place for however many decades, does it make sense? Is it actually practical? Is it actually fair? Is it right? Is it the right thing to do? And as a businessman, he says, no, it's not. Matter of fact, now that I'm in control, I think this is the stupidest thing in the world. Why would we ever run our government this way? And that appears, and then Newt goes on to say, well, honestly, I think what pulled Donald Trump to the right was Barack Obama. And didn't that happen to a lot of people in Arkansas? Didn't you get pulled to the right because of Barack Obama and Barack Obama's policies and Barack Obama's radicalism, Barack Obama looking at business owners and saying, you didn't build that? You tell that to Donald Trump that he didn't build that. Tell that to Donald Trump. Tell that to other people. It really is amazing. This is not the right. The right is not caving into identity politics. I disagree with what Paul Ryan is saying. We're not kowtowing to Alinsky or accepting something that identity politics. It actually is. It's the left and leftist Republicans that have been doing that for a very long time. And I think what we have, what we're seeing in Donald Trump is it's bad for big government Republicans, and let me tell you why. They promise to fix your problems over and over and over again. They come back and they tell you how hard it is. You don't know how complicated it is. It's really difficult to do. And guess what? Donald Trump right now is making it look easy. As hard as it is and as bad as the media and the swamp is revolting to, everything that's happening, Donald Trump, under his leadership, is doing more as far as policy goals for the right than Republicans have done in decades for this country. And I think that's why they don't like him, because they're exposing that, hey, this is not just some sort of, song and dance theater show where you just, the show just keeps going on and you keep getting your money and everything else. There are real problems, and people's economic lives at stake, our actual lives at stake. You know what a big deal it is that Newt Gingrich says, listen, I was for the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, but we have to stop and say, hey, what do we have to show for it? Was that really a good move? You understand what a big deal it is and what a big blow that is to people who think that it's our responsibility to go in and nation build? It's big stuff, big stuff. We're going to take a break, folks. Don't go anywhere. Back in just a moment.
If you believe the Second Amendment protects your right to defend your home with a firearm, where do you turn if the government confiscates your gun? To the courthouse. The Founding Fathers created your Seventh Amendment right to a civil jury to protect your freedoms. The courthouse is where you fight the overreaching hand of government. And the Brad Hendricks Law Firm is where the fight starts. Call the Brad Hendricks Law Firm at 501-221-0444. The Brad Hendricks Law Firm in Little Rock, standing ready using the Seventh Amendment to protect your Second Amendment rights. Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax-deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
I think were indicted on federal charges of espionage here in Arkansas.
Yeah, they were trying to steal our rice technology, or they did steal it, I think, from Stuttgart.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what they do. They lie, cheat, steal, forced technology transfers, theft of intellectual property, these joint ventures that they set up that are designed for them to get our technical information so they can counterfeit our product and then flood the market with a cheaper version of what we're trying to build. And that creates a competition problem. Most recently, if you see what's happening in the soybean market, this is more related to China's misreporting, deliberate misreporting. So what happens is they go in and they don't report accurately carryover stocks from the previous year, and then they overstate their demand, and so then, of course, the market responds in that they plant more soybeans. They do this deliberately to depress the price. They run the price down, they short the market, and then they've got a depressed cash market as well.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
A real quick story before you start the rest of your Monday morning. I just want to tell you something. I got a friend of mine, or it's a friend of my family's, rather, who's a veteran, served this country admirably in combat in Vietnam. And this guy's been going to the VA hospital his whole life, essentially, well, since he got back, And it takes him years to get the things that he needs. Years. Goes to the VA hospital recently. Goes over in Memphis. And the report is astonishing. It's like night to day, is what they said. They had valet parking. Normally you have to get there so early because there's no place to park. They had valet parking. They pulled up. Somebody was there to go park their car for them. They walked in. They said the place was spotless. It was immaculate. It was clean. They had a giant picture of President Donald Trump. Everybody was friendly. Everybody was nice. Hey, how you doing? Hey, how's the weather out there? Normally nobody talks to them. Normally it's like just the doldrums in there. They said it was amazing what has happened to our VA hospitals. I just wanted to share that story with you. I would love to hear from any of you veterans out there that have had a similar experience. If that story is right as it's been related to me, if it's wrong, but if it's true, and I have every reason to believe that it is, folks, again, results versus constantly using our veterans as political pawns, saying we got to take care of our veterans. Well, here we have a situation, it looks like, that is actually happening. Folks, that's all the time we have for today. This broadcast is available at conduitnews.com. That's conduitnews.com. We will see you tomorrow. Get ready, the media. There's going to be more narratives coming. Who knows what's coming this week? Just know that whatever happens, it will be Donald Trump's fault, unless it's actually something good, and then it will be, I don't know. It'll be Donald Trump's fault for not happening soon enough, or sooner. Anyway, folks, thanks so much for listening. Arkansas, have a great day. Be safe.